Oh, hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Olga. Okay. We got a couple minutes here. Any questions from anybody on the first week, second week? So last week, we went over the first chapter, which is the job search journey, which was the whole path that the course takes. Today, we're going to be talking about knowing yourself well enough to market yourself. So we'll talk about what that means. But I asked you to do a couple things. One was send me your resume, and I have received a few, but not everyone. So I want to remind you, even if you have one that's old or you're just going to be starting it, download a Word template, start the process, because that's going to be important later in the term when we start using the resume. So get me a resume. I think the second thing I asked you to do is research associations that might align with your particular goals, career goals, be it marketing, accounting, general management, and get a sense of, I wasn't encouraged you to join it yet, but get a sense of what's out there, because that also is going to be very important. And we'll talk about why that's important going forward. All right. Another call for any questions, any thoughts, reactions? No? Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here with you on chapter 2. So you should be able to see that. Does that everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So chapter 2. So the way this book in a term is laid out in 10 chunks of work. The first part is last week we kind of looked at what's this career path, what's the steps to get into the marketplace, find an opportunity, work opportunity, or career path that really matches my interests. And how do you identify that, find it, engage it, become successful in that? And that was kind of a broad overview. Today, we're going to start with the first important point, which is know yourself to market yourself. Now, you could kind of say, well, gee, yeah, I should know myself, or, okay, I think I know myself. What's the next step? But there's a lot more to this than what appears to be in this title of the slide. Knowing your character traits, your personality traits, knowing yourself in terms of jobs you've held in the past and what you've liked and not liked, work opportunities you've had in the past where you've reported to someone and you respected them but didn't like them. Maybe you liked them and didn't respect them. How did that happen? How did you manage it? Again, the framework we're trying to change here is this idea that employers are the ones that have control over your life, and they hold the job opportunities, and you're expected to conform and comply with the way they want you to in order for you to be awarded a job opportunity. That's the current way we tend to frame this. And we chase wage rates, we chase job postings, cross our fingers, hope somebody gets back to us. And so that what I'm suggesting is that a lot of people approach it that way. What I'm trying to have you do is reframe this process and in not looking at it where the employer has control, but that actually it's mutual control. You have control and they have control, and this process is mutual. So to get there on a level of being mutual, you have to really know yourself well enough to know what you are looking for, so that when you get a job offer, You can recognize it as something that fits your interests and goals or doesn't fit your interests and goals. I think a lot of us kind of approach the process with the idea that if we get a job offer, I'm going to take it because I need a job. I need to pay my bills. I need, what have you. And this reframing that I'm discussing here is this idea that you don't chase one job until the end and not get it, and then you chase another job until the end and not get it in a linear fashion. You're going to actually begin with this process of knowing yourself well, is you're going to be making multiple applications to multiple jobs that are better fit for you, so that you can have multiple paths of interviews and business opportunities where you're in a position where you can turn job offers down. I think the way I would describe the second framing, the way I'm trying to frame it, is you want your to get yourself in a place where you're independent, you're confident, and if you get a job offer with an organization that you're not comfortable with, you can say no, as opposed to feeling like you have to say yes because you don't have any other prospects. So part of this process is developing a process or a plan where you're looking at multiple opportunities at the same time, not just one. And to begin with this, this chapter, I would say that remember that the employer has two questions they're trying to answer. Are you a person who can be trusted? And can you do the job? That's really the two questions. Can you do the job? They're going to look at your education, background, skills, and experience. And can you be trusted? Trusted doesn't mean, do I give you cash and you return it necessarily? It means when you make a promise, do you keep it? Do you make an appointment at 2:00 and show up 5 before 2? Do you agree to do a report and the report is incomplete? It's a little bit like these courses you're taking in college. There's an element of getting into this habit of understanding how you get a grade and completing all the assignments on time, quizzes, discussion forums, papers, what have you, in all your courses. And that gets you developing a good habit or skill set to complete these. Another way to look at this idea that, you're making promises and keeping them is that if you make promises, meaning you have good intentions to do things, but you don't always do this. And this can be with brothers, family, employment, what have you. You're expecting people to judge you on your intention to do the work, not the work that didn't get done. And that's a weak position to be in. And you want to develop your character to the point where instead of agreeing to everything with good intentions, you agree to only those things that you're going to complete on time. And you say no to people who don't, or who are you're not going to complete on time. So I'll give you an example. We talked a little bit about this. You're going to move from one apartment to another in about 4 weeks. You call 6 friends. All 6 friends give you thumbs up. I'll be there or help. It's a Saturday morning at 8:00. The 4 weeks go by. There's 6 friends you're expecting to show up, and 6 don't show up, 5 don't show up, 4 don't show up, 3 don't show up, 2 shows up. So what happened to the other 4 who 4 weeks ago committed? They promised they would be there, and now they're not. Now, do you go and call them up and tell them that you're no longer my friend? Of course not. But what goes on and analyze and announce is that the 4 people who did not show up, their trustworthiness scale that you have for them, they've become less trustworthy, meaning when they say they're going to do something, you can't quite count on them doing it because you don't know. Does that make them a bad person? No, but it establishes the relationship you have with those people as to a trustworthiness scale. I'll say it a little differently. We all have friends and acquaintances, and among our friends, our closest friends, we usually have one friend who we love and we hate. We love because they're always there, they're always engaged and trying to be helpful. We hate them because they will tell us the truth. They're the ones when you're going to move your apartment to a new apartment in 4 weeks, and you call your 7th friend to ask if they'll help, and they say, no, I'm not going to help. I'm not going to show up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I've got other things I need to do or I want to do, or no, I hate moving, so I'm not going to do it. Now, you appreciate and respect the person for being honest, and they're actually telling you, I'm not going to give you the impression I'm going to help you with good intentions. I just don't count on me being there. And so that's what I'm saying with an employer who's looking at you being trustworthy is, will you get the job done that I'm saying is described in this job posting? And of course, with good intentions, you're going to say yes, but then there may be elements of that job that you don't get done on time or don't get done correctly, or are averse to because you're either not skilled in it or inclined to do that work. That is not a good match for you and the particular job that we're discussing, but it's also costly to the employer. So knowing yourself, what your aspirations are, knowing your history, what you like and don't like, you're better able to condense all the job postings and opportunities down to a narrower group that are better fit for you. And the better the fit, the more successful you're going to become because it aligns with your interests and values and skills, if that makes sense. So how do you get to know yourself to market yourself? One of the issues in this, remember what I said, the employer has two questions. Can you do the job? And are you trustworthy? Well, you have a job in this process. It's not applying. And let's go back to the original way we framed this process. We give the employer a reference as a cover letter and a resume, and then we expect them to ask us questions, and we do our best to answer the questions. Well, the employer, again, is trying to answer, are you trustworthy and can you do the job? But we're just giving them bursts of answers to that, what we might think of as an interview or interrogation. You've got to do more than that. If you're really hoping to begin a career, you've got to engage the employer with this in mind. You're trying to help the employer understand what they need, and secondly, how you can help them meet that need. In the original process, you're forcing the employer to figure that out on their own. And if you're not providing information in a form that they can get or understand, or there's a competing person for the job that does a better job than you, you're not going to get those job opportunities. So part of this process in chapter 2, in knowing yourself to market yourself, is to look at a job posting, understand the job requirements carefully. And usually the first 1 or 2 or 3 job requirements are 80% of that job, and really understand what that employer is looking for. And as you engage the employer, you start to ask questions to gain an understanding of what those 1, 2, or 3 job requirements are, so you can really appreciate what the employer is attempting to do. And in the second step of that process is to know yourself well enough to see if you match up with those 3 requirements. And if you don't, this may be in a place where you turn a job opportunity down or you stop the process, if that makes sense. But again, to have the confidence to be able to meet an employer in a mutual way, you have to do some work to get yourself to a place where you can be confident and have a dialogue, and be mutual in the control of the process. Otherwise, you're going to be subjected to the employer's whims, and you're going to be, praying and hoping that somebody offers you a job because you need a job to pay your bills. Now, that's not a good place to be. A lot of us have experienced that. So a lot of what goes on here is, in the first step, is before we start applying for jobs and looking for things, we really need to understand what our role is in this process. It's to communicate to the employer that you are trustworthy. It's to communicate that you, in fact, can do that job, and that you're helping the employer understand how your skills, habits, knowledge, and experience are going to best help that employer fix that job. That's the second framework, the one I'm trying to help you kind of grab hold of. The first framework is that you're not giving a lot of effort to the employer to help them understand why you're valuable, or to let them know that you're trying to understand the job that needs to be done. And you're putting the burden of all that work on the employer. And that's not going to be a good outcome for you. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay. All right. Next slide. So here we are, chapter goal, chapter 2, identify what makes you unique and valuable and describe it concisely. So you can see here the arrow points to know yourself, to market yourself. That's the second chapter in the first phase, and this is the whole textbook. Each of these, under each phase, is the title of a chapter. So next week we're going to picture yourself in the workplace. Now, again, this is a step or a stage to kind of understand what kind of a work environment do you work best in? Is it a large group, small company? Is it in a service business? Is it in a product-based business? Are you working closely in a team environment? Or you're on your own? Those are kind of things you want to think about. Okay,
Steve.
chapter out. Yes.
Sorry, I have a question on the
Sure.
first things we discussed. So there are two things he told us to be when we apply, being trustful and to do the job. So what might be a very specific causes not to be done the work the way how it has been described or required? Is there some ideas? Can it be both ways, from the company side or from the employee? What would be sometimes
Okay.
that
And
the jobs couldn't
is it
be done the way how it's been required?
okay?
Well,
And is it loaner? Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So, and I think what I'm think you're asking me is, if you were competing with, say, 15 other people, how do you make you look different and more valuable than the other 14? Is that your question?
After we hired, and so we might not do the job as required. So what might be the cause sometimes, very specific.
Okay. So let me make a couple comments. First of all, in the process leading up to being hired, the way to make yourself unique is to talk about the employer's needs, not yours. Everyone that goes into a process of getting hired talks about themselves. Here's my degree, here's my experience, here's what I do. And they spend it's almost like a marketing brochure, and you're not problem solving for the employee. The employer has an empty seat they're trying to fill. They describe what that empty seat does during the day. To differentiate yourself in the process leading up to a job offer is to work at trying to understand the employer's needs in filling that role. Let them ask you questions about your background, skills, habits, but you focus on the employer. What is it the employer needs? Now, once you have the job, there's certainly a period of time where you're in a learning curve. New faculty at Mount Hood Community College, for example, are not required to do advising and some of the other committee work that you typically find faculty doing, because the college wants them to focus on perfecting their teaching skills and classroom skills and getting comfortable with the process. And that's likely to happen in the first job you get. So there'll be a period of time, 90 days, 6 months, where you're given some freedom to kind of find your way. But again, whether you're a new employee or an existing employee, the way to make yourself valuable is to focus on what's important for the company, not what's important for you. What's the work that you do that makes the company stronger, better? And I don't necessarily mean profits. It could mean morale. It could be the culture of the company. It could be driven, how do you represent yourself as a trustworthy person? How do you develop a reputation for that? Well, in that example, if you're employed and you want to have a reputation for being trustworthy, you specifically make promises to do things for people, work, and you follow through. And at the same time, if someone's asking you to do something that's takes up too much time, or you're not equipped to do, or it's bad timing, you tell them you can't or won't do it. You won't do it now, or you can do it in the future, but you put conditions out there that doesn't force you into a corner. So, and that sounds counterintuitive because if your boss asks you to do something, you kind of feel like you have to agree to do it. And in some circumstances, maybe you have to. But remember, you can also have a discussion because if your boss wants you to do something, he wants it done right. You can have that conversation about, I can do it. I can, it may not be my best work, but I could get something done. If you can give me another week, then another 10 days, however long it is, I can really put a better product together. So you engage your boss that way. Does that help, Leonard?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Chapter outcomes. So after finishing this chapter, there's kind of three things that come out of this chapter. Create an inventory of what you personally can offer an employer. Now, it's interesting. That first bullet point, it's almost the mental picture is that the employer's giving you a job posting with job responsibilities. In your mind, you should have an equally detailed inventory of who you are that would match that job posting. So, instead of job requirements, you put job performance skills, and then you list what you can do in a job. Some of that's transferable, some of it's not, some of it's unique to you, but then you get a chance to look at matching. You have a clear understanding of what jobs to look for and what jobs not to, to avoid, and put those together. Now, there's a deeper element of this because when you're focusing on the employer, that also means doing research on the employer. Is the employer in the news lately for an award? Or is the employer in the news lately because their CEO was fired for sexual harassment, or there's a lawsuit going on, or product copyright infringement, or what have you? So you want to develop the quality of a company's environment and culture. It starts with the leadership. So if a company has strong culture, strong values, it's a reflection of the decision makers and leaders. Correspondingly, if a company doesn't have a good reputation or has a weak reputation for any number of things, it's usually because the leadership reflects those same issues. And you have to go into this process understanding that you may take a job with a company that fits you well, but there's something you're not going to get, which is maybe a productive work environment, or maybe it might be contentious for a period. So create an inventory of what you personally can offer an employer. And the employer is basically asking that. They're saying, well, what can you offer me? And you can say, well, look, we'll get into this a little bit further in a later slide. I don't want to get off track. Develop a personal brand statement. Okay. This is probably just a handful of words that basically describes what you do or who you are. So, for example, you could say my personal brand statement is I only make promises that I'm going to keep, or I make promises that I keep. I'm a hard worker and reliable. I get work done. I'm a team player. I mean, you've heard the other statements. Now, some of these are generalized and don't make an impact, as much of an impact or impression. But if you really understand your skill sets and your interests and your values, you can make a pretty good, strong personal brand statement. If to begin with, you might look back at times when you were forced to do something you didn't want to do, or you elected to do something that no one else wanted to, but you volunteered to do that. What was your thinking in doing that? Why was that important to you at the time? Because that's part of who you are. The third and last one is developing a 30-second commercial. This is also known as an elevator pitch. Envision you're sitting at a table of 8 people, 7 other people and yourself. You're at a luncheon at an association, and you're an accounting student at Mount Hood, and there are 7 people at the table who are in the accounting profession. There's CPAs, bookkeepers, and others. And someone around the table looks at you and says, Luis, welcome to our luncheon. We've not seen you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? And instead of trying to think of something spontaneous off the top of your head, which, can somehow sound mindless, you want to have a fairly deliberate I'm a student at Mount Hood. I'm graduating in June with a degree in accounting, and I'm really looking forward to getting into my career path, starting with accounts payable, accounts receivable clerk, or helping advise on taxes, compilation, whatever it might be. So you have a little bit more of because what'll end up happening once you do your kind of initial introduction, who you are, what your aspirations are, people are going to follow up with questions. They're going to say, that's interesting. Tell me more about your interest in accounts payable. How did you start that? So you basically, the 30-second commercial isn't there to answer a question definitively. It's to start a conversation. It's really what that is. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Personal inventory. So this is the first of the three. We're going to have a few slides around personal inventory. Obviously, your education, professional training. This includes Mount Hood, obviously, but it could include any kind of certificates you've earned at an existing job, any kind of licensing that you've completed, cosmetology, insurance, securities licensing, anything like that might count, even if it's expired. If you're a pilot, you've got a private pilot license. Even something as simple as a food handler certification might be something you want to include in this. What's your work experience, skills, and accomplishments? Now, there's kind of two elements in this. One is what have your work experience, skills, and accomplishments been? And then are they similar in nature or are they very different? And it doesn't necessarily mean one's better than the other, but you might have been in a restaurant role, and then you might have been in an office role, and you may have been in a construction role. That's not bad, but what you want to be good at is describing what those experiences were. What are the accomplishments you earned, if any? One of the key parts, and I'll encourage you again, when you get out of school and you're actively looking for employment, you're going to find yourself in that process where people are going to look at your work experience. And the reason employer, remember, there's two questions. Are you trustworthy and can you do the job? To help the employer answer that second question, they're going to look at what you've done. And have you done anything that's even closely aligned with the job description that we have posted? And they're trying to match that up. Now, this is where you can get involved in helping the employer understand your work experiences and how they do line up with that, because resumes are just brief snapshots. They don't give a lot of background and detail. But here's my point. It's very hard while you're in college to also have work experience, particularly if you're going to be in marketing as a marketing major or accounting as an accounting major. One of the things you can do is that you can seek out a part-time job, 10 hours a week, in the accounting profession. H&R Block takes volunteers. In the fall, they look for students who want to work part-time, who they will train. And as of January 1st, they'll have them deployed to their H&R Block offices to have people who they provide tax advice to who can't afford it. So, and they give you all the training and all the tools to be able to do that. But that's something that you could do while you're still in school that you could put on your resume, that you were an H&R Block employee. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that 8 to 10 hour part-time job at H&R Block is frankly an internship. If you're an accounting major and you're working for H&R Block, you're exploring the career through that work experience. That's something you can talk to an employer in an interview. When they say what work experience you've had, you can talk about with H&R Block. I had an internship. An internship, frankly, is loosely described again as a work experience aligned with your major. So if you're not let's say you're going to school full time and you're working full time. Maybe you're working at Safeway or Fred Meyer. You could go to your store manager, and ask the store manager if you're in accounting, if you could observe the person who does the accounting for that particular store 3-4 hours a week. So you job shadow, you have a conversation, you find out how they work. That gets you closer to understanding what an accounting role might be, but you have something to put on your resume. You have to be a little creative with this. The last bullet is transferable skills, such as your time management, communication skills. Transferable skills are skills that you can move from one job to an unrelated job to another unrelated job, and these skills are still relevant. So, for example, if I became a really good TIG welder at a body shop, and then I took a job at Fred Meyer, my welding skills don't transfer to Fred Meyer because there's no welding needs at Fred Meyer. However, if I were in a body shop and I educated and trained people on certain roles in the body shop, that ability to train people transfers to my next job. So transferable skills. So when you're doing your resume and you're starting to list skills, you want to look at things, knowing Microsoft Office is technically a transferable skill. Knowing Quicken or QuickBooks is a transferable skill. You want to ensure, again, remember, you're the employer who's interviewing doesn't know you. And they have your resume, a cover letter, and some references, and they're going to do a half-hour, 45-minute interview. They can't possibly understand how valuable you might be to them unless you help them understand that. So you've got to work harder at helping them understand how you can help the company meet their goals, if that makes sense. Okay, let's keep going. Personal inventory, again, education, professional training, list school names and dates. So some of you are still in school full-time, you're not going to graduate until winter term or spring term. List Mount Hood Community College, and if it's a marketing degree or accounting degree, list that, AAS in marketing, and then in parentheses, put expected graduation June 2024. But you list your degree. I mean, you're close enough to getting the degree, you should be putting that down in that on the presumption you're going to complete the degree. In reverse chronological order just means, what you're doing right now goes first, what you were doing prior to that goes second, and so on. List career-related courses. Many employers today will require employees to complete online training. Some of it's compliance related to ethics in the work environment, sexual harassment in the work environment, diversity in the work environment, and you want to list those courses in your resume that you've completed. Obviously, any degrees or certificates. Now, if you've been awarded a degree or certificate, I mean, the city of Gresham awarded you a designation for volunteer work, you put that, because see, again, these are things that are manifest in who you are and help the employer understand that you're more than your degree. There are things you've been doing in your life that have contributed. It could be volunteering, it could be nonprofit work. You want to make sure you capture all that. Add any organizations and activities, describe awards, scholarships, and achievements. Personal inventory will continue this. Work experience, skills, and accomplishments. List company organizations and dates, again in reverse chronological order. So you're the first on the list is your most current work, and then so on. There used to be a time when if you had a amount of time between jobs was a bad thing. That's not the case any longer. You don't need to worry about that. The way I would do it, there's two ways to construct a resume. One way is called a functional resume. And what that means is you take the job functions you've had in the past, restaurant assistant manager, construction, whatever, construction assistant supervisor. What you do in the function is you describe the first thing going left to right is the job you held, the role, the function. Assistant manager, the title you had, or the organization, and on to the far right is the dates you held the job. That's a functional. So you emphasize the function on the left side of the page. In a chronological one, where you don't have any breaks in service, and you can show you've been, for example, you want to indicate to someone that you've worked with a company for quite some time, which imply that you're a hard worker, you're loyal, you don't move around that much. Then you start with the dates on the left-hand side. So 2020 to 2023, Fred Meyer, bakery manager, Gresham store, whatever, like that. So you can think about that a little bit. Job functions tend to be a little bit more descriptive because as I'm reading your resume, I'm going to associate. I'm not going to look so much at the dates. I'm looking at the role you held because I'm trying to see if that aligns with my job posting. Paid jobs, internships. I've talked about that again. I'll talk about it in the future. Military career, any military career, and what you did would be valuable. Volunteer work, community projects, work with your church, any of that. List duties, accomplishments, and achievements. Again, we're looking at evidence. We're trying to help the employer see the evidence of you being trustworthy or a person of character, and also someone who can do the job. Now, many of your duties and accomplishments and achievements might not directly relate to the job, but the fact that you have participated in, volunteered, or been hired to do work and achieve the work is an indicator to me that I can count on you getting this work done. Skills and knowledge gained or developed, supervising people, leading people, managing people, any recognitions or commendations, letters from your employer, and handwritten notes from your supervisor that you did a great job. Those are all important. Again, personal inventory, two kinds of skills. This is what I was talking about a little earlier. There's job-specific skills needed to perform a particular job. Map a route using an employer's GPS, balance books, frame a residence or commercial building. Those are specific. Transferable, these are things that you take with you: follow directions, communication, math ability, deal with high pressure situations, analytical skills. So if you're looking for a role in the accounting industry, you might want to put job specific skills down, like Quicken or Microsoft Office. Let me talk about Microsoft Office, for example. The reason you want to think about putting Microsoft Office down is that in Microsoft Office, one of the applications is an Excel program, the spreadsheet. What you may not know today is that most businesses that exist, in many respects, have two software systems that they run the company on. They have a proprietary one that's dedicated to the industry. So the restaurant industry has a peculiar software program that all the employees have to know and understand because they're putting information into that. It gets collected and analyzed. So, and if you're a packaging company, they have one that the industry uses that you will get familiar with. So that's one of the two. The other one is almost all companies use Excel. They use it extensively. In fact, many times the original software that's dedicated to the industry is outdated, or the company that produced it is no longer in business, and they can't update that. But they've got so much data and value in it, they can't abandon it. They can't leave it. But that system isn't doing what they need to do in current business world. So what they'll do is they'll continue to what's called a legacy system. They'll continue to keep that system alive and active, but they'll complement that with Excel spreadsheets. So knowing Excel, knowing how to do pivot tables and how to make your way around Excel is going to be very valuable, because you may, particularly if you're in the accounting area, you're going to be expected to be able to create and manage Excel spreadsheets. Okay. Personal inventory. This is the first of the three again. This is the last slide. Accomplishments, educational accomplishments, work, volunteer related. And the author is suggesting to describe those accomplishments using the WHI method. So you describe what you did, how you did it, your personal traits or skills to achieve its success, and why it was important to the employer or the community. So again, you're reinforcing with the employer, in this case, primarily that you can do the job, and indirectly you're saying you can be trustworthy, but you're helping, you've got to do this to help the employer understand how good you are, how valuable you are, what you can offer them. If and unless they ask you this specific question about your accomplishments, and you're not prepared to give them a comprehensive answer, you're going to be a weaker candidate, and more than likely, you're going to lose out to a better prepared candidate. Okay. Now, let me stay here. So we're going to leave personal assessment and go into personal inventory. I'm going to go into personal assessment, but I want to stop here and see if there's any questions. Okay, Olga, I think you have your mic on. Okay, good. All right, well, let's keep going. Personal assessment. Self-assessment, assess your career interests. You know, a lot of us work on the level, I don't have a job, I need a job, that's all I need. I don't need to think about a career, I just need to get a job to get paid. You really want to kind of get into this process a little deeper so that you have more control and influence over what it is you're going to do rather than chasing hourly wages. You want to identify your personal values. You know, what's most important to you in a relationship in terms of your friends? Is it honesty? Is it being direct? Is it being able to count on them? Is it a personality trait or a character trait that is valuable to you? Think about, you can even have a cup of coffee with a couple of friends and just say, you know, if somebody asked you, you're asking your friend this question, somebody asked you today, what are the one or two most important things you value about me? What would you say? And let your friends kind of help you describe that. Clarify personal lifestyle needs and desires. And another element of this is, you know, when you graduate, get your degree, and you go into the work environment, does it have to be on the east side? Can it be on the west side? Can it be in Vancouver? Can it be in another state? Are you willing to move? Do you have family here? And that's important. You need to stay in the area. One of the challenges I have as a faculty member, I operate the internship program for students in the business division, is that there are quite a few opportunities on the west side in Beaverton and Hillsborough with Intel and Nike and other organizations over there, but many students can't get there or are disinterested in going to that side of the city, which is fine. And more importantly, it's important to understand and know that that's a point of importance to you. It's not a bad thing, but you know, that's an element of self-assessment. What fits? Now, some sources, career services counselors. I'm going to show you. This is if you're in the courtyard on campus and you face the old bookstore. If you look to the right, you'll see a display. Now, in this display, it's hard to see, but these are posted job openings. Many employers in the Portland area, and particularly in Gresham, call Mount Hood looking for students or graduates because they've got a job opportunity and they want to inform students. So when you're on campus, make a habit of going by this and checking out. This gets updated sometimes daily, every other day. Check these out. If you see something behind the glass you like, take a picture of it or go inside the offices. That's what's on the right here, career planning and counseling door. And there's a receptionist in here and they'll help you. Now, here's what's interesting. Notice this is Mount Hood. This is free of charge. They do career coaching. They'll help you with your job search. They have software in there, not just Indeed, that they've got other software that can help you find jobs that aren't posted. They can give you personal counseling, help you understand strengths and weaknesses. They actually have a couple of interests. They have strong interest tests. They have Myers-Briggs that tends to help you narrow down what your career interests might be, where a good match might be. Resume and interview prep. If you don't have a resume, you've got an old one, they'll help you build a new one. Student employment, part-time, full-time, military education benefits, peer advisors for veterans education, veteran services, as a veterans lounge. There's an awful lot of good services in here and very talented people that can help you. So make sure that, even going by and dropping in and introducing yourself and talking to one of the counselors could be of value. Okay, personal brand statement. Before I jump into this, let me see if there's any questions. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is the third of the three suggestions that chapter 2 is getting at, personal brand statement. It says power pack statement about you, summary of the benefits you offer to an employer. Now notice this isn't a statement about who I am and how good I am and how trustworthy I am. The focus isn't on me. The focus is on the employer. You're marketing yourself. You're a product, in effect. This is part of a brochure where you're marketing yourself, not unlike a product, a pair of running shoes. There are elements and features of a running shoe that are important to certain parts of the marketplace. What are those features about you that are unique to the marketplace that you can talk about? Now, I will tell you a couple things. Almost no one that you're competing with for a job will ask and talk to the employer about their problems. Most everyone else is talking about who they are and how good they are. And very few, if any, people actually talk about their skill sets and how that benefits the employer. In effect, you're a problem solver, not unlike a physician. So I'll give you this example. Most of you have gone to a doctor before, and the routine's pretty straightforward. You go into the doctor's reception area, they greet you, they alert the people in the back that you're here. You sit down, you wait, nurse comes out, walks you back to an examining room. The nurse has a clipboard, she asks you some questions, she takes your blood pressure, asks symptoms, asks pain levels on a scale of 1 to 10, makes the notes, puts the clipboard in on the table and walks out the door, says the doctor will be there shortly. In 5 minutes, the doctor comes in, picks up the clipboard, reads the notes from the nurse, and starts to ask you more questions and more detailed questions and trying to diagnose what's going on. And before the doctor even starts to talk about what he might prescribe or might do. Now, this is what you should be doing with an employer. You should be taking that same approach. As a physician, you're trying to identify the problem and properly diagnose the problem before you start to suggest you are the solution. There's two reasons. One is you want to make sure that the employer knows you're trying to understand them, but you're also trying to find enough about the job posting to see if it's a good match. Because if it's not a good match, you don't want to accept a job offer. So the absurd example would be if doctors work the way most people do when they're applying for a job, it would work like this at the doctor's office. You'd go in, you would register at the desk, the nurse would come out and the doctor would come out, and they'd start talking about prescriptions and medicines and treatments that have discounts on, that they can help you with, that might be interested in, vitamins, whatever. They're opening their coat and they've got vitamins on this side and prescriptions on this side. And it's absurd to think that a doctor would do that. But a professional, attorneys do the same way. If you're a professional in the sense that you're going to focus on an employer and help them, you do it in a professional way. You do a lot of information gathering and questioning about the job. And again, I think I talked about this last week. An example of that when you're going in for the interview is that you review the business's mission statement or principles. And again, in my example, let's say the third principle of a company is that we treat all employees with great respect. Well, when you're in the interview and the interviewer says, well, what questions do you have? Instead of asking about benefits or when the job might start, ask them a question about the third point in your mission statement is you treat all employees with great respect. Can you give me 2 examples in the last 12 months where you've treated an employee with great respect? And then you stop talking. and you allow them to kind of formulate an answer. But that's that mutual process I'm talking about. You're trying to find out enough from the employer to know if this job is something you can do and want to do, and it's an environment you're going to thrive in. And if it's not, then you gracefully and politely end the process and move to the next job opportunity. Your brand statements using resumes, job applications, cover letters, online sites. And, another thing I would suggest you do if you haven't already is, if you don't have a LinkedIn site, is to go and investigate that. Maybe the first step would be to look at a couple of YouTube videos on the basics of LinkedIn to understand more about what's there. LinkedIn typically is not a place where it's a hunting ground for job opportunities, although that does happen there. It's more of a professional place where you can begin to state more about who you are, what you've accomplished, and what your interests are. Eventually, employers, if you're making applications, will look at your LinkedIn page at some point, but it's not a place where typically what ends up happening when you establish a LinkedIn account is you get quite a few people who are selling coaching skills or coaching programs or educational programs, and nothing wrong with that, but you typically don't find employers reaching out to you based on your LinkedIn profile, typically. Create your personal brand statement. Start with a word or two that describes you. Add phrases to describe how you do things and what you are known for. List a few of your personal traits. You've got a great sense of humor. You're very reliable. Weave words in steps 1, 2, and 3 together. Try their combinations. And a lot of this is not presumptuous in the sense that you're trying to create an image of who you're not. It's really who you're comfortable with. And a lot of creating a personal brand statement is being honest. So if you're not particularly good at something, it's okay to say you're not good at something. It's almost required today that kind of more of a direct, honest assessment as opposed to creating a persona with your personal brand statement. That's really not what this is about. And you don't, it's not a requirement, but you want to kind of develop a standard answer to start a conversation with a group or yourself where it's consistent so that you have the same kind of information coming to mind and you can learn to hone that and perfect that. Some examples, I'm a harmonizer who helps people get along together. I'm a highly competitive individual who likes to win at everything I do. It's an honest statement. A person who sees beauty everywhere and tries to capture it in ways others appreciate. A researcher who appreciates the challenge of discovering how things fit together. A persuasive salesperson with a passion for matching products with people's needs. A teacher at heart whose passion is to help other people be the best they can be. A welder who matches the right welding rod and electrode for every job, whether it's sheet metal or aerospace construction, on and on and on. Now, if you're not comfortable with this, it just seems a little archaic. That's okay. You don't have to do this, but it can be helpful. 30-second commercial. This is a third of the 3 items that the chapter is talking about. It's also called an elevator speech. The reason it's called an elevator speech, it's described this way is it's this idea that you can step onto an elevator with a stranger on the 20th floor. And by the time you reach the first floor, this person who's a stranger could ask you, hi, my name is X. I'm an attorney. What's your name and what do you do? By the time the elevator hits the first floor, you've communicated to this person who you are and what you do, or how you help employers, help you solve problems. You're a problem solver, you're a detective, you're a professional, however you want to express that. Hone your message for each prospective employer. Speech that highlights your strongest qualities and shows how they'll benefit the employer. Use it in networking events, practicing real interviews, and thank you and follow-up notes. I've talked about the Gresham Chamber of Commerce on Friday mornings. I think at 7:00, they have a networking event. And at that event, I think the first 20 minutes, half an hour are just eating coffee and donuts and walking around and introducing yourself. But there's a formal part where after half an hour, they have across the back of the room, they have seats lined up facing each other, 2 rows. of seats facing each other, and everybody goes and sits down in one of the seats. And for, I think it's 2 minutes, maybe 3, you have a conversation with the person seated directly across from you. So I have 3 minutes to describe who I am, what I do, what I'm looking for, how I can help businesses. And they listen to you, and then you in turn listen to them describe that. After 2 minutes, there's a bell rung, and you move one seat to the right. And the person across from you moves one seat to the right, and now you're in front of a new person, and so on. So they move around. So everybody in the room has an opportunity to meet everyone else in the room and have a 2-minute commercial or elevator speech where you're able to describe what you do. And many times employers are there to look for prospective employees. Other ones have different needs. Sometimes you're talking to someone who's not looking to employ somebody, but they in fact know someone who's looking for someone just like you. And many times job opportunities get surfaced that way just purely through networking, because, people who are aware of their needs of their network or trying to help solve problems will refer you to or introduce you to other people who are in fact looking for someone with your skills and knowledge. How do you do it? Draft it. Start with your personal brand statement. Write a brief summary of your education. List the things the employer needs. Again, you're looking at the job description and the posting. What is it? What's the problem? When you go looking at job postings, you should be reading it and asking, what's this employer's real problem? Is it stated clearly in this? What is it they need and what are they looking for? Is that something that's interesting to me? Is that a good fit for me? What would be the good process? Now, the way I would go with this would be, if it's a good fit, something that's intriguing to me and interesting, and it's a solid employer based on some research, is that I might want to know, well, do I know anyone who knows someone at that company who can introduce me to the company? Did I meet anybody at the Gresham Chamber of Commerce who might know this person? 4, put it all together in a few sentences: who you are, what relevant skills and education you may have, how you meet the employer's needs. I'm Steve Conrad, a full-time student at Mount Hood. I work part-time for H&R Block. I'm working toward graduating with my accounting degree, looking forward to getting involved in the accounting industry, and specifically looking to help employers with their bookkeeping. That's an example. I made that up off the top of my head. Try out several versions. You can get your friends together. Another thing you could do, if you've got people who from school or in class, start a morning coffee or an afternoon coffee where 3, 4, or 5 of you get together for 45 minutes to talk about goals, talk about job applications, talk about ideas, talk about hacks, talk about issues you've got. So you have a sounding board and a support group to help you kind of think through how you're going to do this. Don't exaggerate credentials. It's pretty obvious on resumes. Write only about the good stuff. Don't showcase faults or weaknesses. Don't exaggerate, never lie, not even a little. So here's what I would describe this process of interviewing with an employer, is that it's a process of deception. Pretty strong word. The interviewing process that you go through is a process of deception. Now, why would I say it's a process of deception? Because it sounds bad, evil, sinister. Well, here's why it's a process of deception. You are going to go to the employer and you're going to attempt to give the employer an idea of who you are, your skills, habits, your knowledge, your experiences. What you're not going to do is tell them what you're not good at, what you failed at, and what you hate. You're also not going to roll out of bed 15 minutes before the interview and just show up. You're going to get a haircut. You're going to get some services completed. You might buy a new blouse or a shirt, or you might polish your shoes that you haven't polished in a while. So you're trying to show the employer your very best side, making a good first impression. Nothing wrong with that. That's expected. Everybody does it. The employer, on the other hand, is doing the very same thing. the employer is trying to give you a view of their best side. They're going to talk about their benefits, their mission statement, how wonderful they are. They're not going to tell you about any lawsuits the company's incurred, or if someone's been fired recently for a workplace issue, or they've had OSHA come in and find them because there've been safety issues with some of their heavy equipment, or they're in financial straits and not sure if they can stay in existence. And they're not going to tell you those things. So, this idea of exaggerating is a term I would tell the employer, do the same. Don't exaggerate. And when I say deception, what I'm suggesting here is it's incumbent on you to do your homework, to do the research. Talk to, there's a software called Glassdoor, and you can put company names in there, and you can find comments by former employees about what that work experience was like at that company. Glassdoor is the name of that. So you can talk to existing employees when you go in to the receptionist for an appointment. Chat with the receptionist briefly. How long have you worked here? Do you like it? Do you enjoy it? What don't you like about working here? See if you can start a conversation. Okay, think about it. You have more to offer employers than you might realize. Just ask someone else. Often we are our own worst critics. Take time to see your strengths. So, this is easy to say, but we are very hard on ourselves. I mean, we have moments we regret, we wish it never happened. I mean, all you as a package is an asset, and you want to help the company understand how that asset can help them. What you don't want to do is reduce the interviewing process down to the idea that you're just a set of hands and legs, and that's it. And I need hands and legs to do the job at my work environment. And if your hands and legs can't do it, then I'll find another pair of hands and legs. That's called fungible. This is what the fast food industry looks for. Burger King, McDonald's, and they look for fungible employees. They're not looking for employees with educations. They're not looking for employees that bring unique skills, welding or whatever. They just want hands and legs. And if you don't take the time to make it clear to the employer what value you can bring as an asset, and also spending time to understand them and what they need, you're going to miss out on opportunities. Second bullet, success you achieve in one area of your life is a good indicator of successes you will achieve in other areas. So what's gone well? I mean, you can be successful in your family. You can be successful in a volunteer circumstance with your church or synagogue or temple. You can be successful at work. You could, and there's all kinds of different ways to kind of size this up in terms of success. And frankly, if you do a good job of describing your skills, knowledge, attitudes, habits to an employer, and you feel those are very valuable, and the employer doesn't, that's fine. There are a whole bunch of other employers out there. So you shouldn't take it personally. I mean, if the fact that an employer doesn't understand how you can be an asset, you shouldn't work there. I mean, why work for someone who doesn't appreciate all the talent and skills you bring to the job? You should be proud of that. You should be helping the employer understand that. What the employer doesn't experience that this chapter gets at is that most applicants are talking about who they are and how good they are. Almost no one is asking the employer questions about understanding what their need is. Again, think of yourself as a physician, and you have someone come into your reception area that's in pain. You don't know what it is. You've got to first diagnose the problem like a physician. So you take tests, you ask questions. Do the same with an employer. Do some research. Go to the library at Mount Hood. Check a Dun & Bradstreet report. Look at any kind of experiential valuations that you can find on the internet and collect the data, names, dates, places. This will give you an idea of who this is. You can almost think of this as, this is a leap, but it's a match dating app. You're trying to match your skill sets up with an employer and making it a good match. The employer doesn't know how to do that and usually doesn't do it very well. You can help the employer avoid bad decisions by offering you a job and not you not taking it. That's a good outcome. If it's not a good fit. So, get active, be part of the process, own the process, help the employer, even to the place where you understand it well enough to know that's not a good fit for you. And I think I've told you the story that if you do this right, you'll find the employers really interested in hiring you anyway, because they've never seen anybody like you come through their door. Trying to understand the business, trying to understand the problem, trying to diagnose it, trying to help the employer, even to the point where you might tell the employer, look, I'm not the kind of person you need in this job, but there's a different kind of person I would describe you should be looking for, on my view. So I'm going to turn the job opportunity down, but you should be looking for this kind of person. Anyway, okay. Last slide. Next week is chapter 3. We'll talk about picturing yourself in the workplace, visualizing that. Some of that has to do with thinking about work experience in the past and what worked and didn't work. But that's what we will be doing next week. So what questions does everybody have? I know I'm good, but I'm not that good. Somebody's got to have some questions. No, if you don't, that's fine. It's okay. All right.
I have one question,
Yes.
Steve.
Sure.
So you said we can check some kinds of reports at Manhood Community College about the company. What kinds of report, or do they provide us, like when we look for a job and searching about the company? So we can go to our college and check some kinds of report about the company. Do they have that kinds of?
Yeah, the way I would do it is I would go into the library and talk to one of the librarian assistants and explain that you're looking at an employment opportunity. You want to research a company's background, and they will be able to tell you the 3 or 4 different resources that you can use. The most common one is called Dun & Bradstreet. And the reason you go into the library and do this, if I wanted my own access to Dun & Bradstreet, it might cost me $2,000 or $3,000. But the libraries have subscriptions to these services, and you can get full reports. Now, the Dun & Bradstreet report, for example, will tell you, and these are even for mid-sized and even some small companies, they'll tell you the salaries and ages of the owners, the CEOs, and upper management, their titles, their job descriptions. They'll tell you the last 3 years financials. Did the company make a profit? Are they in financial trouble? What's their rating? Are they AAA rated, AA rated, B, and so on? So that tells you, that's a profile. It's not unlike you see in Yelp, where restaurants getting evaluated. So Dun & Bradstreet will do some of that. You can see the history of the company. It also identify lawsuits the company's incurred in the past or are undergoing. So that's Dun & Bradstreet. Now, in my recollection, that the library shares this license with other libraries in Oregon. So you have access to that as a student. There'll be other tools that they should be able to tell you about. If you talk to an assistant librarian at the library and they're not sure to understand, ask to talk to a different person or the manager of the library, because they know what the resources are and they're trying to get students to come in and use them.
That's good information. What is that word? You said Dun Brand report?
It's called Dun & Bradstreet. DUNN is the first word. And Bradstreet, BRADSTREET, Bradstreet. Now, if just for fun, you could Google that now and just get an understanding of who they are and what they do. They might even show you or allow you to do an abbreviated report on a company like Nike. You could pick one and just see what it looks like.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you're on campus, you're going to stop at the library, stop at career services. Just go in and just say, I'm going to graduate here, and I've got a resume, and I'd like someone to talk with me about what I should be thinking, what I'm missing. Are there opportunities I should be looking at? Are there personality tests that I can take. So go in and just, and particularly if you're a veteran, particularly go in there and check that out, because those people are very talented and they don't get a lot of traffic, oddly enough. And I think it's because many students don't know they exist. So do that. If you haven't already, send me your resume.
Okay.
And then also, search for professional associations for the degree you're seeking: marketing, accounting, general management. I mean, the American Marketing Association is probably the most prevalent, well-known organization. They have a local chapter in Portland that you can attend, and I believe they have a highly discounted student membership fee that you can be part of, and you get a newsletter. You can post your resume on their site. You can attend their breakfasts and lunches, I think free, I think. So
They
make
do
sure
have
you
monthly meeting, or
say that again.
they do have a monthly meeting, or
Yeah, they do. In fact, if you go on the AMA website, I would you'll see the national organization. Look for local chapters. Go into the local chapters and look at their calendar, and see. They usually have public speakers. They'll have somebody, an executive from Nike, talk about marketing. They'll have somebody from Columbia Sportswear, Adidas, other organizations, some of the colleges even. I mean, we have a brand new marketing director at Mount Hood. We're going to be having some interesting changes in the website during the month of October. You'll see some changes in the portal. So yeah, do some research, check that out.
yeah. Okay, very helpful. So when you get a chance, if you send us those very important links, if there is on the Our Mind Tap book, we can find out. But those are very good informations. If you send us the links, how to find on Google, those how the professional
Well,
people
what's your degree going to be in, Loner?
accounting. After 2 terms, probably from now on, it's a program I'm attending, associate degree in accounting.
All right, so I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to share a screen with you in a minute here. Okay, so let me show you this.
Okay.
And this is what I can send you the links, but I'm not going to, because what I want you to do is do the research and yourself. I want you to get
Sure.
resourceful. And so I'm going to show you this
Okay.
site. So here's the Oregon Society of CPAs. Now there's two broad organizations accountants become part of. One is called the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which is a global organization for anything to do with accounting. But Oregon's got an excellent association called the Oregon Society of CPAs. Now, notice if I go up to the band at the top, future CPAs and students.
Okay.
And if I go down to student membership, student membership, look, it's free. What are the benefits? Skill building, discounts, free 4-hour mock CPA exam, post your resume and browse this career center. You're going to graduate with a degree in accounting. You can post your resume on their site. More benefits, you get a newsletter. So for example, let me tell you one of the more valuable parts of joining an association like this. You're going to get a monthly newsletter, and the newsletter is going to include articles on what's currently on the minds of people in the accounting profession. And you're going to read that newsletter, because when you go for an interview to do accounts receivable, accounts payable clerk, for example, someone may ask you what's going on in the accounting profession or the bookkeeping profession, and you're going to have all this current, you're going to know what the headlines are. You'll be able to talk intelligently about it. And this is the same for marketing, same for business management, on and on and on.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, sure. All right. Other questions or thoughts?
I had a quick question.
Sure, Luis.
So I was just wondering, would it be a bad idea if you made multiple like personalized resumes as opposed to just one single general one?
There's two schools of thought. No, it's not a bad idea, particularly if you're in applying to different industries. So if you're applying to an accounting organization or a bookkeeping organization, or you're applying to a marketing organization, you may want to reorganize the content to emphasize skills or experiences that are peculiar to that company or that industry. So it's not a bad thing. Where you don't want to go is where you've got 10 or 12 different resumes and you're trying to remember which one you sent to the company. Because they're eventually at some point going to review your resume, and you want to make sure that you're keeping that organized. So, and this is one of the first things in chapter 1, they talked about organizing your files. You can do that with physical files. You can do it within your computer. But if you're going to create 3, 4, 5 different versions, that's fine. That can be helpful, particularly if you've got some varied experience, but just be organized so that you know when you get contacted or someone's going to review it, that you know which one you presented.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions or thoughts? All right. So Sunday, the week 2 ends. You've got a quiz to complete this week. You've got a discussion forum to add to. And then next week, we're going to cover chapter 3 on Friday. So you want to read that and kind of stay on top of that. If, again, I'd encourage you from an organizing standpoint, in Blackboard, within every week, there are PDFs at the bottom of every page that you can print, that you can print them and read them, print them and fill them out in pencil. But the culmination of all of these PDFs, there's a 50 or more of them, will give you a comprehensive business plan, and it will help you clarify a lot of the questions we've been talking about, because it will walk you through steps to get the clarification. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to look at those PDFs. It's the career PDFs that you find at the bottom in each of the weekly sections. All right. So if there aren't any questions, if you think Lona, you have a question?
Yes, about our book. You sent us a new key code, but I already purchased. So what would be the one you are sending us? I already an account with Cengage, and I already purchased the key. So what is the other code you send us? The MindStop key
The
code?
updated key I sent out? Is that what you're referring to? The updated?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened yesterday is, I'm not sure, it might have been Luis who pointed out that the URL, the website, and the course key were incorrect. So I went back into Cengage to get the correct information, and I put that out on a class announcement. So if you're going to access the online Cengage MindTap course for the 9th edition, you're going to use what I provided in the course announcement yesterday.
Okay, I will verify that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So if anybody thinks of something after we get off the call, email me today or at any time over the weekend. Otherwise, everybody have a great weekend, a safe weekend, and I will see you this time next week.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.